CEE,
Central Europe Explained,
an IDM podcast series
powered by Erste Group.
Episode 27. Financial Recovery, the Common Assessment Framework assisting public institutions from a national to a local level. Developed by the public sector for the public sector, the Common Assessment Framework is a total quality management model for self-assessment. The CAF aims to assist and help improve public sector organizations' performances at a national, federal, but also local level. Implemented among many countries around the world, 4,100 organizations already use this model. CAF 2020 was launched in 2019 and intends to strengthen to focus on digitalization, agility, sustainability, innovation, collaboration, participation, and diversity. In the last episode, we discussed how the implementation of a European Silk Road could be an interesting tool for more cross-border cooperation and economic recovery in CEE. Following on this, we will now see how models like the Common Assessment Framework can also bring solutions for financial recovery and better synergy in the region, especially the Western Balkans, on a local scale. I am Sebastian Schäffer, Managing Director of the IDM, and with me is Thomas Prorok, Managing Director of the KDZ-Centre for Public Administration Research and Head of the CAF Center. Thomas, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
To start us off, could you briefly sum up what the CAF is?
Yeah, the CAF is a tool, an instrument for better quality and better governance in public administration. It's a European tool, it's a European model, meaning that the members of the European Union developed this tool for improving public sector and public sector organizations. For us, this is very important, especially when you talk about the Silk Road and also the countries of Western Balkan. Why do we do that? We want to improve public administration and public sector in order to increase life quality and economic prosperity. So the idea is, in order to have better life, better economic development, we need a good public administration. And this is what CAF is about. This is what CAF is doing. So it's a European invention, already more than 20 years ago, and it helps public sector to get better. That's it.
Mm-hmm. So that's a very ambitious plan, and you have mentioned that this has been ongoing for quite some time. Can you give us a few examples how it is actually implemented in the region, especially the Western Balkans?
Yeah, it is ambitious, but it's always good to have, let's say, the big guideline of what we want to achieve. But behind this ambitiousness, it's a tool. So what do? We go to a public sector organization. It could be a municipality, can be a ministry, can be also a public company like railways. And we discuss together with the employees and the leadership in the organization how to improve. How to improve the leadership, how to improve the human resource management, how to improve, the partnerships and with whom they are working. That's the idea. So a very consensus-oriented discussion within the organization in order to improve. This is what we are doing. We are doing that with municipalities, with the ministries, and also regional governments. So it started in the Western Balkans, in the Western Balkan 6, with cooperations in the ministries of public administration. So we, as the Austrian-based center, have contracts and cooperations with the ministries for public administration in all of the Western Balkan Sea countries. And we have a very important partner in the region, which is RESPA, the Regional School for Public Administration. It's located in Montenegro. It's an international organization, or let's say better, a regional organization combining all Western Balkan countries in order to improve public sector and public administration reform.
Mm-hmm. I could imagine when you work with all these different stakeholders, but also with all these different countries, that there's a lot of challenges and obstacles that you come across. So Can you tell us what was successful, but what was also something that you discovered is a real challenge when you implement such a project?
Yeah, on the one side, we have, of course, challenges and obstacles, but we should not forget it's an added value to have the cooperation between different countries, and especially in the region. Getting experiences and knowledge of how to work in the different countries. And it is, of course, also an added value to work between the different layers of government, to have municipalities and ministries, for example, which we are working on. So, in fact, I see more added value in this work because we bring together the ministries of the Western Balkan Six. We bring together the municipalities and the ministries within each of the countries. So it's a cooperation, it's an exchange, and this makes the added value. When you ask me now, what are our successes? We have successes in different countries. When you start to work in a ministry, and honestly, each ministry is different. Each country has also a different administrative culture or organizational culture. And when you come and start this work, and you have to imagine it's a very consent-oriented work, it's a discussion between leadership and the employees. And this is not very, I have to say, natural in some of the organizations. So first we come and we start with a new culture of openness. Yeah? It's also a new culture of how to handle mistakes, for example, of trust. And these are then already the success factors to see, okay, it makes sense to communicate with each other. It makes sense to discuss together our improvements, our reform steps. And this goes in the end in the direction that we have sustainable improvements in the organization. So that's a big difference. Normally, you have to know how to say external consultants are coming. Sometimes also from the international level, coming to a ministry and tell them, okay, you have to save money, you are too expensive, and it's much too much human resources. So this is in most facts the quick recommendations from the big, international consultants. And this here is different. We discuss together with the staff how to get better, and this in the end goes to sustainable improvement. Meaning we have better processes, for example. We have better services for the citizens. I mean, this is why we are working in public sector. It's about getting better services for the citizens. Based on the needs of the citizens or customers, developing the processes. We have new knowledge management systems. In most of the organizations we work with, they afterwards have a new mission statement, a new kind of human resource management based on neutrality, based on fair employment, on an open recruitment. So these are in fact our success factors. We, in most of the organization, I have to be honest, not in all, but in most of the organizations we could implement.
When we talk about the successes, we certainly have a changed environment now due to the pandemic. So there is additional burdens that are put on public administration, especially on a municipality level, not only when it comes to the financing, but also, of course, you talked about the staff and the need for provide services for the citizens. I would like to know a bit more about how has the pandemic influenced your work within that framework, and also what are the changes that happened in CAF 2020?
Yeah, many questions in one in one question. First, the changes of the pandemic. Let me cite one study from Germany. It's not from the region, but from Germany. A study asked 4,000 employees of the civil sector, of the public sector, in what has changed in your work. And 25% said my work changed. I had to take over new competences, responsibilities. On the local level, it's even 35%. So we know from some studies, honestly I don't have it now from the Western Balkans, but we know from some studies that there is a real big impact on the service delivery and on the employees. On the local level, 35%, imagine. And of course, when you look in more differentiated view, you see that it's more the younger staff who took over new services, new competences, rather than the, let's say, older ones. So there is a big impact. That's the first one. The second one is we know also from one of these studies that the values changed, the working values, in a way that more responsibility at the personal level is now a kind of consequence. So people work now based on their own responsibilities, being more responsible. We also know that the rate of innovation was increased. And as I said, I don't have it in figures, but I have the experiences also in the work with my organizations in the Western Balkans that this is the same. So they had also big changes in the way of which services have to be which have to be delivered in a very quick view, in a very short time, having new competences for the staff, and this is what we call the agility. So this, let's say, a little bit buzzword of agility is here something which we see, which has to be, which is a need for the leadership, but much more for the staff. So these in fact are the new things. Of course, the digitalization with homework and so on made also a big impact, but in my view not in the same level as we see it, for example, in Austria or in Germany.
Mm-hmm. When we take all the lessons learned that you have described, what would you say is the biggest challenge for the future? What are the next steps that need to be developed here?
Yeah, there is these expect the unexpected, working with uncertainty. Till now, or till 2 years ago, this was more, we saw it more in the books and in the scientific articles. Expect the unexpected, work with in uncertain environment. But this is now what is coming also for the future. So how can we organize the organizations? And, this is also an issue of the link between public administration and politics, and the political level. How can we organize this in a way that we have the opportunities to handle uncertainties or new crises? We all know that the climate change, people say this will be the next crisis, but I mean, we don't know, but we have to be open. Until now, we were organizing always our public administrations, same like the private companies, in a way of a lean management, cost saving. Clear, we know what the staff has to do in a very concentrated way. No real flexibility, and this has to change. This has to change, and honestly, we don't know fully how this will change, but because in the end it means it gets more expensive. So when you see that in the last years, money, didn't count in a way of, okay, it costs what it will cost, and that 10 years before we were saving, and now money doesn't count anyway. We have to find another compromise in future for that. To see, we have to be open for this uncertainty. We need the resources for that, also the human resources for that, which means we need the space. We need the space in public sector to deliver from one day to the other maybe different kind of services. There's one very small example. It is how the municipalities everywhere in Europe organized in a very quick way new kinds of shopping support for elderly people who couldn't leave their flat during the crisis when they were sick or when they were in quarantine. All municipalities did that, but this was not a task of them before. This has been done, let's say, from one day to the other, this kind of flexibility. And we need to be aware, have climate change in view, that these kind of changes, this kind of delivering new services will be the future. And therefore we need resources, therefore we need flexibility. So when you ask me, this is the main issue which we have to be aware of. And because it's also the title of this podcast, financial recovery. Of course, in the end, this means how to pay. Also here, I don't have the full answer for that, but it's clear that we have to prepare our public services, our public sector, and even more in our Western Balkan neighboring countries to be able to finance that. Maybe this is also a support which is needed from the European Union. Maybe this is a new kind of distribution, the finances between the layers of government, from the central government to the local government. We always have in view a kind of high decentralization of a country, which makes sense to have, a responsibility on a subsidiary and regional on a regional level, and therefore the finances, the budgets have to be distributed in a transparent and fair way. So here, the next years will be, I'm quite sure, very, very delicate, because I'm afraid that a kind of saving philosophy will come back, or will try to come back. But this is not the way we can handle future crises. And that is, that is also what we are working on when we start with this, our CAF approach, because it goes also in the end in a direction which brings more cooperation between the organizations and the levels of government. And cooperation means also the question of who can finance in what way which services.
Fantastic, Thomas. Thank you very much. So the future also for European integration is a more resilient public administration, and we need to find some sort of melange between heavy saving and spending at all costs in order to make us ready for the future. I think you're doing a very important job with the CAF framework here, and I wish you, of course, all the best for the future challenges. At the end of our episodes, we always ask our guest for some piece of art, maybe literature, music, that is sort of linked to the topic. And of course, we would also be very interested in your recommendation.
Yes, Sebastian, I decide for a book which I'm reading now, which I'm very impressed on. It's from the French author Michel Houellebecq. Just now a new book has been published, but I don't talk about that. I talk about, in German, it's Serotonin. And it's, for me, absolutely interesting because it's a combination of course, as it always in Houellebecq's literature, of how to survive personally as men and women, but also what the society and the society developments bring. And here it's very interesting because he's a worker in the agriculture sector for the government, and is really complaining about how we destroy the agriculture of Europe and the farmers in Europe with our global competitive system, and also the reactions of the European Union to that. And this is also what I really see in my work, and also what I mentioned before. It's about how to finance, how to make a fair distribution, and how to prepare a system in a way that it's resilient, that it brings life quality and fairness to all of us. So I like this book and I can recommend it.
Thank you very much, Thomas, especially for being with us today and presenting to us the Common Assessment Framework. I think we learned a lot. It fits perfectly into our episode series, and we look forward to continuing working also on the local level in different formats. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, you enjoy this podcast? Then tune into another CEE episode and subscribe to the IDM podcast series on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Acast, or elsewhere you get your podcast. And also, have a look at the rest of our work on our website www.idm.at. For any feedback or podcast collaboration, feel free to contact me at e.hunterberry@idm.at. The email is in the description below. This was CEE, Central Europe Explained, a podcast series produced by the Institute for the Danube Region and Central Europe, powered by Erste Group, with the ongoing participation of Daniela Paiden, Malvin Natalik, Daniel Martinek, and Sebastian Schäffer. Production and editing, Emma Hunterberry. Proofreading, Jack Gill. IDM Podcast.
Institut für den Donauraum und Mitteleuropa.
Institute for the Danube Region and Central Europe.
European perspectives.
Regional actions.
Cooperation and expertise since 1953.